Hello and welcome to another Full Court Press podcast.
College basketball experience.
There's like no energy on that one. I mean, we're in person. You got to have energy. So we've got Coach Jeff Linder from the Wyoming Cowboys. Welcome to the Full Court Press podcast. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, good to be here.
Yeah.
Not too often we get people that travel across the country to come to Laradize. So
Yeah.
hopefully we've treated you well.
Yeah, so far so good.
Hospitality's been top notch.
How did you like the vending at the game on Saturday night?
Vending was good. You don't think about coming up to Laramie and have options for sushi up in the concession stand, but they did us right.
Yeah. Have you eaten at the concession stands yet?
When I come to the girls' games, we'll have some Big Dipper ice cream and you name it. So my daughter's all about the ice cream.
Yeah, it's all about the ice cream, right? So the one thing I wanted to ask you, I've heard through the grapevine that you like to talk trash to star players when you're on the bench. Do you continue to do that still?
Well, I'm not sure where you got that info.
Rex Walters.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so that probably stemmed from back when we were at University of San Francisco.
Yep.
And Gonzaga was my scout, and I come to him and I say, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's the only way we can beat these guys. And I was like, we're not going to guard Jeremy Pargo. And he's like, so you're telling me we're not going to guard the WCC Player of the Year? And I'm like, nope, because if we don't guard him, then we have a chance to guard Zachary and Olenek and those big guys and not just get pummeled like everybody else. And so, so we went with that idea, and then we just added, which almost kind of came beforehand when we were when I was at Midland Junior College with Grant McCasland, when we played Mark Adams and Howard Junior College in the regional championship game, and they had a really good player that went on to play at Texas Tech named Charlie Burgess, who was a really good player, but he wasn't a great shooter, and we kind of employed the same tactic. And sometimes we'll tell the guys on the bench, hey, make sure that we let them know to shoot it. So we're not really talking trash. We're just trying to encourage them to shoot the ball. And then when they realize, well, these guys aren't going to guard me, then sometimes for some guys, psychologically it messes with them. Some guys, then in the case of Air Force earlier this year, the guy made 9 threes, but we still won the game.
Yeah, so Coach, you've worked your way up through the coaching system. Became a head coach at Northern Colorado. Led the Bears to three straight 20-win seasons. Was Big Sky Coach of the Year. Get the position at Wyoming. What's it been like up here in Wyoming? And since you've taken the head coaching job, there's been a lot of adjustments with the NCAA and the style of coaching that's needed to put a winning program on the court. Like what's it been like the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, obviously, having grown up in Denver and having watched Wyoming play growing up and having spent a lot of time in Wyoming as a kid, boating, fishing, and whatnot, when the opportunity came to get the job, I mean, obviously was excited, knowing that it's not a job for everyone. I mean, it's not an easy job in terms of, really, especially proximity to players. I mean, that's the one thing from a geographical standpoint. You draw a circle, and there's not a lot of players and that you can recruit from, and so you always have to go into somebody else's pond. But I take the job literally the week, the day the country shut down with COVID, and so I'm a sucker for punishment. So we take the job. We had beaten Wyoming the 3 previous years. I was at Northern Colorado. Knew their team well. We kept four players off that team. And without visits, without anything, with COVID, we had to find a way to put together a roster. Luckily, at Northern Colorado, the success we had Xavier Dussel, Marcus Williams, who ended up being the Mountain West Freshman of the Year, Graham Ike. Those guys were coming to UNC, and so for us to be able to get those guys here, that obviously helped. And then you have a player like Hunter Maldonado, Kenny Foster, Hunter Thompson, but to try to put together a roster during COVID, and to still be able to compete at the level that we're at. I mean, it's obviously the Big Sky's a good league, but I mean the Mountain West is a whole nother animal. And so to be able to put a roster together that allowed you to compete and win games and have a winning record during COVID, and then to have that team return, add a couple pieces, and then to go to the NCAA tournament to get an at-large bid in the second year, was a testament to my staff, to the players, but then also during that season, obviously in January, NIL and transfer portal came about. And so,
never heard of it.
Yeah, never heard of it. Yeah, we all knew it was coming, but so for me, in the matter of 3 years, to have to navigate COVID, to navigate NIL, transfer portal, all the stuff that's going on, obviously probably my coaching background, having been at a lot of different levels, the Division II level, the junior college level, places where you have to really adapt and adjust on the fly, and where you have to, in the junior college level, Division II, a lot of times you have to go and get a new team every year. And so when we had some of the guys leave last year, I thought, people are like, man, these guys are in trouble, because how are they going to go out and get a new team? And I think the background of where I'd been, I wasn't too overly concerned. I would have been really concerned if the transfer portal didn't exist, but there's always a lot of players available, and did a good job of getting the right guys in here. And, obviously this year we've been up and down, but with the team that we got and being so new, I mean, we got the ship back in the right direction. We got the train on the tracks again, and now just a matter of just keep gathering momentum and keep making our way.
So we were on kind of the Mountain West train before the season even started, probably because of him, because he lives out this way. And obviously it's done very well. So a lot of times people will say, well, the Mountain West is a mid-major conference, but it's not. I mean, what would you consider? Because there's kind of like, you're probably a high major. You got the Power 5, Power 6, and then like you guys, American, Atlantic 10 is probably.
Yeah, I mean, 8-10, I mean, obviously the Big East. Now, the thing, the difference between the Big East and the Mountain West is that they don't have football. And so from a resource standpoint, everything's being pulled towards basketball at the Big East schools, which you see a lot of in terms of NIL and what they're dealing with. But from the Mountain West, what really separates our league and why I think it's been the best league in the Western United States for the last couple of years is, obviously there's some really good coaches. Coaches will say that, but then also coaches know that a lot of times in leagues there's a couple of games, a couple of coaches that, we don't need to be totally on our A game tonight, but really good coaching league. It's a really smart league. I mean, there's not a lot of dumb in our league. I mean, if you have dumb, you're going to get exposed in a hurry. And then the venues. I mean, when you're traveling on the road and you're playing in front of sellout crowds at the majority of places. And I think that's where the Mountain West, where a lot of the towns are college towns. They're the only show in town, so it draws a lot of people. And I think that's what really makes our league different, even to say the Pac-12 is just the atmospheres that you get night in and night out on the road.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys will probably get more bids than the Pac-12.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, I'm not Joe Lenardi, but my guess is that'll probably be the case.
Yeah. How much do you get into bracketology? I was telling him I just can't get into it.
I don't know.
It's like I mean, I know you're coach and you're worried about your team, but like, how much do you kind of listen to a little outside noise here?
I mean, if 2 years ago, when you're probably right there on the cusp of in or out, then you probably pay attention to it a little bit more. But at the end of the day, you can only control what you can control, and you can't control what the committee decides to do. All you can do is just put yourself in a position where you don't have to sweat it out on Selection Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. So the big kind of prevalence with our podcast, we talked a little bit off air, is the NIL and the transfer portal. It obviously, you took a hit. You lost 3 good players, Graham Ike, Jeremiah Oden to DePaul, our alma mater, which is doing very well this year, obviously, as you can see. And I wasn't going to go there. I told him I wouldn't, so I'm not going to go there. And then Noah Reynolds, who went with Sundance, who I love his sports coats, I might add. Sundance got some nice sports coats.
Not sure where he gets them from, but how much those cost. But there's only one person that could probably pull that off, and that's him.
Yeah, I mean, I see these sport coats, and like I commented to him when he started following us. I'm like, dude, Coach, you got some great sport coats. I got some good sport coats too. So how much is your recruiting philosophy kind of changing? Because now it's not recruiting new players; it's also retaining the players on your team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think what people are seeing is that the more that you can retain the good players, the better chance of being a good team. Where you see some of these teams, especially this year, where you're trying to bring in 5, 6, 7 transfers. I mean, it's really hard to try to make that work. And so I think the biggest thing is can you go find a good player, go and be able to evaluate, which we've done a really good job of. Graham Ike, I mean, obviously nobody really recruited him out of high school, especially after he got hurt, a couple games into his senior year. Noah Reynolds was during the COVID year. And so really nobody saw him. I mean, the only school that really was recruiting him was, one of my best friends that's the head coach at Northwest Missouri State, Ben McCollum. So when I knew that he was recruiting him, then he doesn't miss too often on good guards. And so
no wonder your friends, you say to him, hey, who are you looking at? I'm just curious.
Yeah. He tries to make it secretive, but somehow that got leaked out. But But I think the biggest thing is, yeah, you can go out and identify and evaluate and find a good player, but then with the way the system's set up now, especially where if you don't have the salary or the money to keep those players, then it makes it really hard to where now you go from being a place that in Wyoming in the past, when Wyoming's been successful, is Finis Dembo, Eric Lechner, Reggie Slater, Theo Ratliff, Larry Nance, Josh Adams. Those guys were here for 4 years, where they had a chip on their shoulder because they were under recruited. They came to Wyoming, but now with the ability to transfer as many times as you want, it's not just a one-time transfer, and then the money that it costs to be able to keep an all-league player in the Mountain West. And if you really probably look at it, all-league player in the Mountain West right now, if you look at maybe the top 12 to 15 players in this league, I mean, they're probably all somewhere around six figures except for maybe a couple guys. And then now, can you keep those guys? Well, it's going to be hard to keep those guys, but then, okay, now when those other Power 5, Big 12 SEC schools can come in and offer $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, I mean, you can't blame a Graham Ike or somebody that has the ability to play to where, I mean, that's life-changing money. And so it's a sad reality of what it is, but it's not changing. It's not going away. And so you either have to find a way to adapt to it and adjust to it, and not just from a fan base standpoint, from an institution standpoint. You have to decide what's important, because if you want to compete, especially in this league right now in the Mountain West, I mean, you can look at the standings, and the standings pretty much indicates where the NIL money lies. And so that's the harsh reality of it. And in the meantime, we'll just do the best we can with who we have and try to keep the guys that we do have in the program, and then hopefully have the ability maybe to add one or two guys that we see that maybe needs to fill a need, a lot like Sam Griffin this year, Quellcott and Mason Walters. But to get a guy that transfer into this level, that's a guy that good enough to help you win games, is not cheap.
What was that offseason like? I see what you did during the offseason. It's like you pulled a rabbit out of your hat, and I don't think the rest of the country realizes that. I'm not sure if Laramie realizes that, like the position you were in, and then to still bring in like 11 new guys, right? And
11?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
11. Wow.
10 scholarship guys. But yeah, I mean, that's where I said my having taken over jobs, as whether as an assistant coach or even as a head coach, same thing at Northern Colorado, same thing here, where you have to go out and find a whole new team. And so that's where I wasn't too overly concerned about you got to go find the right guys, and then just what it takes in terms of, I mean, it felt like we were on a 3-month-long official visit. And then what probably hurt as well is that we didn't have all these guys here in the summertime, because some guys were still trying to get eligible, a couple of the international guys, and so where usually the summer is a big part of what we do and trying to get guys up to speed. We didn't necessarily have that time in the summer to get to kind of lay that foundation. And so then now you get to the school year, and now you have a brand new team of 13 guys, and probably 8 or 9 points returning, and now you're trying to get all these guys on the same page. And said, luckily for me and having a great staff, and then having really good kids that have bought into what we're trying to do in a short period of time. And that's really what college basketball has become. It's a 1-year deal. You can't sit there and say, hey, if we have this guy, and this guy for the next 2, 3, 4 years, well, that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, but how is that sustainable? I mean, let's be honest. From a coach, I mean, I've coached before, not in basketball, but other sports. I mean, I can't imagine having to re-recruit a team every year.
Yeah, and that's why you see a lot of coaches getting out. Because, I mean, in terms of why you got into coaching, in terms of trying to find and develop, and not just from a basketball standpoint, but in terms of helping them grow into young men and the lessons that basketball teaches you, where now, I mean, it's just there is no loyalty. There is no loyalty for fun. I mean, it's just at the end of the day, it's about money. And obviously as coaches, if another job presents itself and there's more money, I mean, a coach has the ability to go do that, but the thing is, as coaches, and we also, if I wanted to go someplace else, there's a buyout. Like you're contractually obligated, where right now, I mean, it's just unrestricted free agency, and you can just do whatever you want whenever you want. And until they figure that component out, I mean, you're just going to have a a product that's not nearly as good as what it's been, because there's just not a lot of continuity or cohesion and synergy amongst any of these teams.
So we talked a lot about some of the new guys in the transfer portal and stuff like that. What's a guy like Kenny Foster kind of represent to the team? Who's been here since you guys have kind of been here since day one together, and he's getting back from an injury. Like, what does that kind of mean?
Well, I mean, obviously, in the case of Kenny or Hunter Maldonado, who was Hunter Thompson, both 6-year guys that graduated last year. Those guys are dinosaurs in terms of guys that are going to be in the program for 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, they're extinct. And the kid, in case of Kenny Foster, who, when I got the job, he had some coming off a really good Mountain West tournament as a true freshman. He could have decided he wanted to go someplace else, but he decided he wanted to be at Wyoming. And then obviously at the end of last year, when guys had decisions to decide whether they wanted to go or not, I mean, he chose to stay. And he's a guy that obviously, I mean, he'll leave his legacy, and it's unfortunate because he's had so many injuries that's impacted him on the court. But just the mentality, and especially for our younger guys right now, like Cam Maniel, Cale Combs, Nigel, Jacob, for those guys to see a guy like him who tore his Achilles in October and came back on the court within 130 days of Achilles surgery, which was 4 months, is unheard of. But for him, knowing that, this is probably my last go around, he's going to get, he's a really smart kid. He's going to get his MBA at the end of this year, and realize that, hey, man, I want to get out there and compete and whatever I have to do, and knowing that, you're really almost on one leg. But he also has a really good brain. He has the ability to process things. So for a guy like him who's playing on 1.5 legs, his ability to see things and his experiences allows him to be on the floor and be a good player.
Yeah. At the rate people are going at, maybe not Kenny per se, but there's going to be guys that are going to get their doctorate because they're going to play. Like, I mean, we've interviewed guys, I'm pretty sure they're 25 years old.
No, I mean, that's where having played
dude,
against,
you got wife and kids?
Yeah, having played against BYU, obviously. I mean, they're always going to be old, but they got Spencer Johnson, I think, is the oldest player in the country.
He's 34, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Max Rice, he's probably, he's 24 going on 26. But, and that's the hard part for the freshmen, because now in today's society, I mean, there is no patience. Nobody wants to wait their turn to play. And what these freshmen don't realize, and what their parents and the people around them, is that right now in the state of college basketball, I mean, it's so old. I mean, you have guys like 24, 25,
look at
26.
Memphis.
Yeah.
I mean, Memphis is, their average age is what, 24, I think, or 23?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the teams that have been surprisingly good this year. They did well in the transfer portal, recruiting a lot of like seniors or fifth-year grad students,
Yeah, and that's where to have, it makes a difference in college basketball to be old, but these freshmen when they don't play, that's like, well, yeah, you're not playing because you're playing against, there's a guy in front of you that's 23, 24 years old. Yeah. And so that's the hard part too, is just educating them on that, because at the end of the day, nobody wants to wait anymore. And that's why here in the next few weeks, there's going to be 2,000 more players in the transfer portal.
It's crazy. And it's just going to keep continuing until they do something, which
it
doesn't sound like they're going to do anything.
They're not going to do anything. And then, the thing behind the scenes is with the agents and the money that they can make in terms of NIL marketing deals, and the amount of money where a lot of these guys, what the hard reality for a lot of these guys are going to be is that they're staying in college because they'll make a lot more money than what they would be doing playing overseas, or the G League. But what these guys don't realize is for most of these guys, okay, you're going to start out at a certain level in Europe, which is going to be a lower level, low to mid-level Europe, and you're going to be lucky on your first contract to make $50,000. And then now you're in a situation where you don't have training table, you don't have a nutritionist, you don't have a strength coach, a trainer that's there from time to time. They're going to realize that, man, this is different, and then you got to go earn that next contract, and that's where you're going to see a lot of guys that just going to go over there, and they're not going to be able to cut it because things have been made so easy for them over here.
Yeah, it's a different lifestyle. But if you go to Europe, you get your car and you get your hotel, your apartment. So.
No, but that's what. Yeah, but you know what? That's what collectives are doing too. These not just the money. Guys are getting free housing, free cars, free meals.
But you know what? I don't think these people understand. If we're going to go toward the professional system in Europe, I had buddies, they're on a 20-day contract and they're in Russia, and all of a sudden they're packed, but they scored 25 points a game and they're not getting paid. and now they got to find another team.
Yeah, or if you don't produce, even if you're on contract, they're going to say, you know what, you're gone tomorrow. And that's where, until we get to a point where whether they're employees, whether they're under contract, I mean, it's just going to continue to be the wild, wild west, and eventually it has to go to that rule to where they are employees. And I'm not smart enough to know all the ins and outs of what that'll become, but
Right.
probably for a place like Wyoming, the sooner that becomes the case, the better off we're probably going to be, because then it evens out the competitive landscape a little bit. But right now, I mean, it's like Major League Baseball. I mean, you have, or it's English Premier League soccer. I mean, you got the Yankees and you got the Kansas City Royals. You got Man City and you got, whoever, it's
And it's funny because I talked to the Akron AD, who I know well, Charles, and he said, all this could have been, like, a lot of it could have been, like, pushed to the side if 15, 20 years ago if they allowed basketball and football players the one-year transfer. He's like, in other sports you never have to sit out. Now, NIL is a different animal, but, maybe Rick Pitino is onto something, maybe making a salary cap.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's kind of what it is right now for places. I mean, whoever has the most money is going to have the better chance. Now, there's still situations where that's not going to be the case.
Right.
I mean,
like the New York Yankees.
Yeah, New York Yankees. But, there's not going to be a Leicester City that's come through from the middle of nowhere to win the English Premier League. But at the same time, that's just the reality of what it is right now. And the places that have the ability to have the most money, you're going to have a better chance to win, just because you're going to have the chance to have an older, better player. Because the transfer portal, those players are not free and they're not cheap. And if you don't have a certain amount of money, it's just hard to get a good enough player, especially at the level that we're at.
Just give them some free sushi.
Yeah, obviously that's whatever works to get him here. But yeah, not sure about that here.
Come to Wyoming for the sushi. I'm not sure that's a tagline.
Hey,
Everybody needs.
we got the best cattle and beef around.
That's a
and,
fact.
Say maybe a ribeye or a steak or a fillet, or a free cow maybe.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Places are giving away free apartments. Maybe we'll give away free cows.
So, Coach, you got 4 games left in the conference tournament. What's the message in the locker room? You guys are. You only have I think it's a 3.1 point margin throughout the season. So every game's close, pretty much. You guys have proven you guys can beat just about anybody. What's the attitude? What's the message? Right now.
For us, today actually was the first day that we've had all our players on the floor for the first time all year, with Kenny Foster being back, and then Kobe Newton was out for a month. Mason Walters was out during the preseason for 2 months. And so today was actually the first day where we had everybody on the practice floor for the first time. And so there was actually a really, really good energy and vibe to practice. And this group's been that way. Early on we had to fight through some of the injury stuff. You get Mason Walters back around Christmas time. And these guys have said, I got guys that like to play basketball, in which kind of goes without saying, but there's a lot of players right now in this day and age that just they like basketball if it's going well for them. But a guy like Sam Griffin loves basketball. Quell Cott loves basketball. They're
fun to watch. They're fun to watch too. We were here Saturday night. They're fun to watch. You got a fun team to watch in general.
Yeah, no, and they love being in the gym, and they can make shots. And granted, I wish they could defend a little bit better, but at the same time, they've given us a chance to win games because they have the ability to make shots. And so that's where these guys, when you have guys that like being in the gym this time of year, when it becomes, even though we're 6 and 8 in the league, it doesn't feel that way. And so that's what gives you a chance, where every day now in college basketball, teams are quitting just because they just feel like there is no chance, there's no hope. Coaches are tired, they're tired.
Still got the conference tournament.
Yeah, which obviously, but for us, if we can just kind of keep finding a way to get better, and knowing that we have a really good UNLV team coming in here on Tuesday, follow that up going to Colorado State. The road doesn't get any easier, but for these guys, it's just another opportunity to go play.
You want to start? You want to do it? Should we do this for them?
Yeah. So what we're gonna do a little thing called the shot clock, and
it's not the shot clock. It takes a lot longer.
Yeah, it does. But we started calling it the shot clock, and then some coaches took a couple minutes. But
some people are still waiting on an answer from them. Yeah. We'll go there.
But LT is gonna fire off like 6-7 questions to you. First thing that comes to mind, first word or sentence. We'll have some fun with it.
Yep. All right. Toughest place to coach at?
Toughest place to coach at for me, or
in general?
In general,
any place.
They're all tough. It doesn't matter where you're at. I mean, every job has its own unique challenges. So in terms of just one place, I mean, probably not, but I mean, I would say all of them have their own challenges.
You're the first coach that's ever said that.
So I was going to be a lawyer.
That was a politician,
Yeah,
lawyer.
you got that right. One word to describe the Mountain West Conference.
Tough.
What did you say in the car? Competitive?
I said because
I should have bet you $10.
You should have. I bet him $10. You're going to say competitive. So,
Damian Lillard. Ooh. Greatest recruiting win in all your years. What's the one recruit that you got that you're like, I got you?
You know, if you ever interview Leon one day, you'll have to ask him about how we recruited Justinian Jessup, who ended up going to Boise State and ended up being a second-round pick by the Golden State Warriors. And that was when I was trying to convince his parents why, you know, Boise State academically was comparable to that of Davidson. And then lo and behold, you know, we go to the airport the next day and Leon opens up a U.S. World News Report college deal, and he's like, oh, Davidson's like 13th in the country and this and this and this, and he just started laughing. But at the end of the day, Justinian wanted to be a basketball player and he wanted to go to Boise, and turned out to be a really good player there.
Yeah, that's cool. So what would be your funniest recruiting story? We've had coaches skydiving. We had Coach Schertz from Indiana State talking about really bad chili. We had one that actually picked him up after a Six Flags event to give him on his recruiting trip. And then Mike Miller was stalked for for the
Donnie
whole year by
Jones,
Donnie
yeah.
Jones.
You know, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of them when you recruit as long as I have.
Exactly,
There's
yeah.
some that I can share and some I can't share.
Well, obviously, right. No, I get it. We get it.
Not from a legal standpoint,
Yeah.
but just from stupidity on people's parts. But going back to your first question about, you know, that led to Coach Walters, when we were at USF and we got the job there, our first recruit, Dante Bryant, we brought him to campus and Rex wasn't there. And so I was literally like 3 or 4 days into being in San Francisco, which obviously if you're not used to the city can be unique in its own. I mean, it could be tough. And then me and Dante just basically for 48 hours just hung out in the city and just drove around. And lo and behold, we got Dante. And
Love it.
I was like, hey, and then Rex
Where'd
like,
you
look,
go to? Where'd you drive around to?
We went to all the different local neighborhoods in San Francisco, and then Rex was like, well, I guess you don't need me around recruiting anymore. So all you're doing is getting in the way.
Love it. Cultural recruiting trip.
Oh my God! One word to describe Wyoming.
One word to describe Wyoming.
As a state or university?
State or university?
Give me university.
You know, I think passionate. I mean, they said it's the one 4-year school in the state. I mean, there's no other place in the 50 states of the United States. You know, Alaska has Fairbanks and Anchorage. We're the only 4-year university in the state of Wyoming, and so we are the one team, the one school, and the one state.
Okay. Who would play you in a Hollywood movie?
Who would play me in a
Yeah.
Hollywood movie? Oh, man, you should ask my wife that question. I don't know. That's a good question. You should ask one of my players that question.
Who would you say is the funniest player?
Funniest player
This year's team.
on this year's team? Man, that's you know, all our guys say Levi, one of our walk-ons from Laramie, is just a sneaky, funny guy.
Yeah.
Which he's too scared around me to kind of let that out. But
Yeah.
from what all my guys say is, I mean, he's hilarious. So we'll give Levi a shout out.
Yeah. Okay. What about funniest coach?
Funniest coach? Oh, Coach Vandiver. I mean, who we call Scuttle, because always, and I know Sean for many of years, he always knows what's going on behind the scenes. But Coach V is just one to himself. I mean, he beats to a different drummer. He walks to his own pace, and he's a great human being.
All right. Who would you say is the best dancer, either coach or player?
Oh God only knows. You're not gonna see me dance, so I just know it's not gonna be.
All right. How many college Division I teams are named Cowboys?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean,
Don't be looking on my sheet. I
obviously-
see it picking over there. I write in chicken
yeah,
scratch.
Oklahoma State. I mean, that's the obvious one. You know, I'll say 5.
5, 3. McNeese, Oklahoma State, and Wyoming, which you didn't name Wyoming. So I'm a little disappointed about that. All right.
That goes without saying.
All right, well, obviously, but you still got to say it. It's like getting a participation point for putting your name on an exam. All right, what song best describes you?
I'm not a big music guy. I'm a podcast guy, and I was an AM radio guy growing up. So I'm not a music guy, but I liked like Pearl Jam, Metallica growing up.
Oh, nice, I love it.
We've had the whole we've had
it's
Grateful
been crazy.
Dead, we've had Frank Sinatra, we've had now what he's saying.
Yeah, but in terms of just one,
Sade, we've had even.
We did have Sade.
Yeah, but
if you're gonna have a walkout song, what would you want it to be?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't know. And that's I'll tell Coach V, who's in charge of the radio. He's kind of like the DJ at practice at times, and so every now and then I'll tell him to throw in something here or there. But nothing of note.
Yeah,
All right. We'll have to ask some players.
Yeah. Well, you won nothing, you got nothing, so I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, So what do you got?
Nice. Yeah, Coach, we'll turn it over to you. Last kind of minute of the this episode, and anything you want to share with the rest of the season to the Cowboy faithful out there. The students, anything like that they could be looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, I said thanks for coming up, and I said the reason why I came to Wyoming is that it is a unique place. It's not for everyone, but the one thing is, you are the one school in the state, and when you go around the state, people know who you are. People are wearing the brown and gold. People are wearing the Steamboat logo. It's just it's unique that way, and it's one of those places where when you have the right pieces. They can get really behind, and that's what I think we've done a really good job of, maybe except for last year, which that was a situation unto itself. But just finding the right players that fit the state, that fit the community, and fit the university, and we have that right now. And I think that's the one thing is that for the fans to get behind these guys, because that's the one thing is that we have is in terms of the support of the state, and the more that we can get behind behind these guys, it's going to allow us to be better. Because George Karl once told me you can't be a championship team without a championship crowd, and we saw that 2 years ago. The students, the fans, they probably willed us to 2 or 3 games that we had here, where if we don't win those games, we're not in the NCAA tournament. So I said it's a tough time right now. It's one of those times in college athletics at Wyoming where you're trying to figure out which way to row and which way to go, and we're still trying to figure that out with the landscape with being what it is. But the thing is, we're not going to sacrifice as a staff on the character of our players, and we got a good group right now. We got some good young players. We got a really good recruiting class coming in, and all we can do is just continue to build and hopefully get ourselves back to the big dance sooner than later.
Yeah, Coach, keep swimming upstream.
Well, I won't be swimming upstream. I'm more so like going downstream or fishing in the stream. That's what I like to do.
Yeah.
I like fishing in the stream.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
Well, Coach, thanks so much. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, all that other good stuff. And we'll be back, who knows, next week, tomorrow on the Full Court Press podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Coach.
Thank you.